days, if you're not on social media, you don't exist.
Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Athletes Podcast. This is episode 230 featuring Sabrina Oostburg. This is also a ncaa boost. If you haven't seen them, some fun little oral supplements to try out. But this week we are featuring Belmont track and field athlete, 2022 Tennessee Olympic weightlifting champion, as well as Meta NIL Empower athlete Sabrina Oostburg. If you have not seen her on TikTok, you are missing out because she creates some of the most engaging content on the platform. She's also amassed over 25,000 followers on Instagram, nearly 50,000 on that TikTok platform, like I mentioned, and she's crushing things on LinkedIn. So I gotta let you know, you gotta follow her everywhere because she just brings positivity and sunlight everywhere she goes. And you folks are going to enjoy this episode of the show where we dive into sports, studying, hustling, building brands, building connections, relationships with others, and so much more. Let me know your favorite part during the show and let us know who we should have on next. You know our athlete agreement. We bring on incredible individuals. All that we ask is that you hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here's the 230th episode of the show. Here we go.
You're the most decorated racquetball player in U.S. history. World's strongest man. From childhood passion to professional athlete. 8-time Ironman champion. So what was it like making your debut in the NHL? What is your biggest piece of advice for the next generation of athletes? From underdogs to national champions. This is the Athletes Podcast, where high-performance individuals share their triumphs, defeats, and life lessons to educate, entertain, and inspire the next generation of athletes. Here we go. We start recording, Sabrina Oostburg. Welcome to the Athletes Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show, the relatable Div 1 athlete, in your words, as you've coined it. But I think we got to start off with the thing that everyone, at least initially, recognized you for, is making that Marine blush by doing a couple pull-ups in the hallway. How the heck were you able to pull that off?
That was completely on a whim. It was actually right between classes when everyone was going back to their class, so there wasn't really anyone around. And I just gave my phone to my friend. I was like, hey, you know what? This would be actually a really funny video. And so I was like, hey, start recording. So I just did a couple pull-ups. He's like, you should do 7, 8, 9, 10. I was like, no, I'm only doing 5. I told him straight up. I was like, okay. Because that's how much you need to get a shirt. And I go crazy for a free t-shirt. And so I just pumped out 5, hopped down. I didn't see his reaction until I saw the video. And then I just uploaded it thinking like, oh, this is funny. But then funny turned into 1 million views, 3 million views, 5 million, all the way up to 12 million views. And that's when my TikTok account really just started to take off. I had probably about 7,000 followers at the time before the video blew up. And then after that, I landed with 35K just from that video alone. I'm like, wow, the power of a viral video just taught me so much. And I wasn't really prepared for that wave of virality because then I was just creating content how I normally did, but I wasn't able to ride that wave as I could have, and I could have gotten more followers from that, which sometimes I regret. I'm like, man, I should post some more content. But I was also really busy at the time with just school, multiple sports, that it's a balance that you have to find out.
Yeah, you also, have your responsibilities as a student athlete because you can't forget about that and your commitment that you made to Belmont. But I think the fact that you were able to just put yourself out there is a testament on its own, right? And I think that's the way you create content. It's so fun, energizing, exciting. You're just being who you are, broadcasting that to the world. It's amazing to be able to witness and live vicariously through you, at least. And you were just at AthleteCon this past weekend. Can you tell me what that was like, who you met, any fun, other exciting people that you saw?
Yeah, so if you are familiar at all with NIL Summit, it's similar to that, but on a smaller scale. So it was put on by my dear friend, Sam Green. I worked with her when I did a program with Instagram, Meta, a couple months ago. And so that's how I found about her. She said, hey, Sabrina, I'm putting on this event in 3 months. So she put this event in 3 months together. And she said, there's going to be brands there. We're going to have a whole competition. Whoever creates the best content for this brand, they're going to get sponsored by them. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so I got sponsored to go out there. So this brand called athletes.org sponsored me flew me out there, paid for my hotel, and I went over there, and it was just so cool. Day one was, I got there like the night before, and so I had dinner with all the other athletes that athletes.org sponsors. So 10 to 15 other athletes were there. Got to meet them in person. And keep in mind, these are athletes from across the country. So people from small schools like Mercer College in Georgia. Then you have gymnasts from LSU. And so it's cool to meet all these different types of people. I met this one girl who does fencing. I've never met a fencing athlete in college before. So it was really cool just having that network. Day two, when it was actual the athlete con, it was cool because we had a whole bunch of workshops. We had people from Instagram come and talk about it. We had the head of athletes.org talk about personal branding. We had this guy came from Canva, taught us how to make just different things so you can make your Instagram look more aesthetic, how to actually use Canva to capitalize on that. I found that really fascinating. We had a girl from TikTok, from Instagram, just teaching us how to create content, but more importantly, how to monetize from it. And it was just such a great experience. We had the whole social media thing later on where we made content with all these various brands. You know, you really had a brand from every single aspect. We had a food brand, a clothing line, a coffee brand. We even had a brand that made rugs. And they made the pink carpet that we had rolled out for the awards ceremony later that night. And so it was just really cool. I think most importantly, it's not just, making content, it's meeting people, which for me, who is really interested in the sports industry, that's what it's all about. NILs, meeting people, making content.
Heck yeah. You and I share the same sentiments, and being able to have those face-to-face, belly-to-belly conversations, as Sean Puri calls them, but they hit different, and people are willing to go to extreme lengths when they've met you in person and they know exactly who you are and the way that you operate. And you obviously have the ability to get that same kind of energy shared with others that you meet and interact with. I've seen you on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. People love the content that you're creating. So continue to do that, Sabrina.
I will add on to that. It's different when you meet people online versus in person. I think the number one thing that always throws me off is the height. I've met Angel. I met, who was it, Flage in person. I'm thinking that she's 5'8". This girl like 6'2", and I remember just looking up to her. I'm like, whoa, you're tall. And so it's cool just seeing like the difference, or like their tone, and like how deep or soft their voice is, how they approach people, and see them in a social setting. And you realize at the end of the day, like, even though you might be putting these content creators on a pedestal, they're still people. And so it's really cool just having that reminder. It's like, oh, like they do the same things I do. They wake up in the morning, brush their teeth. We're the same people.
Heck yeah. Yeah, we've featured a couple of NCAA stars over the past few years, between Mitchell Pelkey, Emily Cole, amongst others. And one of the reoccurring themes is just the ability for young athletes to continue to get better, and they continue to just push the limits. You talked about all the brands that you were working with there. Did you have a favorite brand that was at AthleteCon that you want to shout out, that you want to hype up?
I personally just liked all of them equally. They're all like smaller brands that I've never heard of, so I don't really have a preference, but they're all really cool to see in person.
No one big like Noble that you were just pushing for months.
No, Noble wasn't there. Don't even get me started on Noble, because I've been trying to chase them for a while, and it's funny now because some context for our listeners is that I've been trying to chase Noble to be my sponsor forever. I love Noble. I have a background in CrossFit. In the CrossFit world, Noble's huge. In CrossFit, the highest thing that you could do as a CrossFit athlete is to go to the CrossFit Games, which is like the Olympics of the sport. And Noble sponsors the CrossFit Games. So if you do CrossFit, you know that brand. And more recently, it's been coming out that all these people are starting to wear Noble as an everyday brand. And they just started sponsoring the NFL. Now they're sponsoring all these different football camps. And so now it's getting more and more recognition. But I'm like, you guys don't understand. I've known this brand before they've been a bigger brand. I've been the OG. And now they teamed up with Tom Brady's brand, TB12. And so now it's even bigger. So I'm like, hey, Tom Brady, if you're listening, I would love to do a deal with you guys.
We're going to give you the little AP bump here. I think there's enough people. I've had some crazy individuals let me know that they've been listening to the show. This is the crazy part about podcasts. Everything is incognito. We have thousands of people listening, tuning in. Our YouTube channel, that is, continues to grow slowly but surely. But I'm putting more effort into it. It's just me, myself, and I'm not a YouTube guy. So I'm learning, just like you're learning TikTok. We're learning LinkedIn together. These are parts of the process that they talk about, right? And I think, you've been able to almost highlight and keep a smile on yourself throughout this entire process, even when it comes to seeking out an internship over the summer, for instance. And I know that's something that you've been looking at acquiring outside of school, hungry like I was in my first year to go out and search something out that wasn't even academically required. It's more so because you have a pursuit similar to how you're pursuing Noble. Most athletes don't do that. They don't have the energy or the drive or the desire to be like, hey, brand X, I'm going to work with you. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And it's when I'm able to crack through your company. And kudos to you, because it's going to happen eventually. You're going to create some crazy cool campaigns. It's going to be absolutely insane. It reminds me of Carmen Petrovic, who came on the show 2 years ago now. And 3 months later, she was featured on the WWE in their Next Up campaign. And it's like, this stuff happens, right? And whether you realize it or not, all of the things that you've done over the past 3, 4, 5 years, creating content, the connections you've made are going to lead to so many positive things, because you just planted seeds, and we have the power of time on our side, right?
Right.
Where do you see things going? You're a content creator. You're an athlete. You see you're working with Raymond representation. You're meeting all these cool content creators. Like, where do you see the space going in the next couple of years? What are you looking at? What are you trying out, tasting?
Yeah, so those are two different questions I'd love to answer. So one is, where do I see NIL going? We're in year 3 of NIL, which is it's a baby. It's still growing. Everyone calls it the wild, wild west. And there's so much that can happen, but there's also so many outside influences on it. For example, you have regulations on it. You have NCAA laws. You have state laws. You have the government's opinion on it, on what you can and can't do per state. And so I think as that continues to develop and you have more specificity on, are you allowed to get money in the transfer portal, just things like that, you'll see it start to go to a point where it separates the athletes who think it's for everyone, and then realize it's just another resource that's up for grabs if you're willing to take it. Because I tell everyone, NIL is for everyone who's willing to put the work in. Because at the end of the day, NIL is basically a paid advertisement that you're doing on social media. So if you don't know how to do social media, you're not willing to take time to learn how to do it, you're not going to get very far. I just chatted with a friend the other day, and he was like, do you need to know how to do social media to do NIL? I'm like, NIL is just your name, image, likeness. So, you can show up on podcasts like this. You can go to in-person appearances. But the best and biggest reach is through social media. So technically, yes, but you're not going to do a lot with that. Because these days, if you're not on social media, you don't exist. So you kind of do need that aspect of it.
Tough to broadcast yourself, and it's the power of the internet is unmatched, and you got to take advantage of it. And if you're not on it, you're, to your point, not using it.
Right.
Chase Griffin from UCLA has done a phenomenal job. I feel like he's up in the top. I think he might have been actually named NIL Athlete of the Year, Male Athlete of the Year, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. So, when we featured him on the show, he hadn't quite received that award yet, I don't believe, but now he has. And you know what? These are the cool things that we get to talk about on the show, because it wouldn't surprise me if Sabrina got that award next year because of all the incredible things that you're doing, right? And these are the kind of opportunities that occur when you put yourself out there. And I'm curious, have you always been like this?
Have always been like this? I tell everyone I'm very entrepreneurship minded. So when you come with NIL, that's basically that path. And so to answer that one question, yes, because I just love self-learning, self-growth, all that stuff. Because when NIL first came out, I was a freshman in college. I'm like, okay, there's 2 paths I can go here. Either I go and figure out how to do this, or I just don't do it at all. So I remember going to modern day Google, TikTok, and researching, how do I get an NIL deal? This was like right when it first came out. Nothing came up because no one knew how to explain it. No one knew what to do. But lucky for me, I was very blessed and fortunate that before NIL, I had experience with NIL just without that name. I have a background in not just CrossFit, but Olympic weightlifting. And I would go all around the country to all these different events for that sport. And I would get sponsored for it because I realized, sometimes going to competitions, driving, getting hotels is expensive. So why not just have a brand sponsor me for it? So I was getting sponsored by all my favorite brands before I went to college, specifically for Olympic weightlifting. And Olympic weightlifting is not an NCAA sport. So I was able to get that experience before it came out. So then when I came to college and I heard that NIL was a thing, I'm like, okay, how do I do it? But then I realized it's basically what I've already been doing. So I was able to continue to pave my own way of how to do NIL. And that's really where I got to where I am today. And from that, I'm just like, okay, like just reaching out to brands, doing all that stuff. So I negotiated and did all my brands myself. So now I have like 20 plus brand deals that I did personally before signing now with an agency called Raymond Representation, which has helped me with that because I'm so hungry to do all these different endeavors and projects. I'm like, okay, y'all can go cold reach all these different companies. For me, I need to focus on something else. And so that way I'm getting the best of both worlds.
So you had 20 brand deals before you signed with Raymond Rep?
Yes. And it's funny though, because they, at first when I asked, I'm like, hey, I'd love for you guys to represent me. This was like last year. They're like, no. They initially rejected me. And so I'm like, oh, like, why? They're like, our roster's full. They had too many athletes already representing. So I'm like, okay, like, that's valid. I'm going to come back and make sure you guys want to represent me. And so then I got the 20 deals, and then I came back to them this year. I was like, hey, I still want you guys to represent me. You guys are the best in the agency in my eyes. And then they see all this work that I've been doing, just have this whole receipt. And they're like, wow, like, we'd love to work with you. I'm like, that's right. I've been working for this. And so it was cool to see all that come together.
Heck yeah. Kudos to you, because that takes some serious courage to be rejected, turn around, use that fuel, add it to the fire, come back next year and say, hey, here I am. That's exceptional. Who taught you this never say no mentality? Have you, like you said, you've always had the entrepreneurial aspect, but was this instilled from your parents? Did you always have this fire?
Yeah, it was very much through an experience that I learned this whole like spirit of just never giving up. When I was transitioning from 7th to 8th grade, so in the beginning of my 8th grade year, I broke my leg. And it might just seem like very insignificant, but I broke it near my growth plate, so by my tibia. And that was a lot further of an injury. So this injury took me a year to recover from, which for 8th grade me, that was such a big deal. I'm like, oh my God, my whole career is over. At the time, I was really into cross-country running, and I ran for my school. My mom was my coach, and I was projected to be the number one in my conference. And so I was very invested into running. At that point, running was my whole identity, and that's where I learned that lesson later on, to put your identity in your sport. But when I broke my leg, I had my next meet literally the week later, and I'm just like, what am I going to do? And so when I had a whole wheelchair for a month with a full leg cast from my leg all the way up to my hip, I'm just sitting there thinking, man, I could either be the girl in the wheelchair at my school, just going around just sad and like, pity me, pity that, or it could change my mindset. And so it's through having this injury that I had a switch flip of like, how do I approach things in life? And so that really changed it to more optimism. And so I put like these 3 different posters right in front of my bed when I woke up. So I looked up, and they're like positive quotes that I would say to myself. I don't remember what they are now, but one of them was from Oprah Winfrey. One of them was some Winnie the Pooh quote that was like, I'm stronger than I believe, faster than I seem, something like that. And I would repeat these mantras to myself. And what they did day after day is they would remind me of my worth and remind me that I'm capable more capable than I know. That way, when I have this self-doubt, I'm like, that's not quite who I am. And so from there, I carried that with me throughout high school, into college, into where I am today.
Seems like you've got a good head on your shoulders and you've had things figured out since 8th grade. I think injuries
Not quite.
sometimes I think sometimes injuries can be the biggest blessing in disguise, and they may not seem like it in the moment, but what they teach you long term, and the opportunity to identify maybe some weaknesses within your body and how to address them, it's game changing. I remember when I broke my wrist in grade 10 playing football, I blew up my lower body afterwards, and like my calves got bigger, and it was like, you know what? I couldn't train upper bodies, so I decided to work on maybe where I had the opportunity. And I think you've obviously done the same, but more around the mindset, which is probably better applied. When you think about your transition, your trajectory, frankly, tell me about Belmont track and field, going from Olympic weightlifting, CrossFit, then to track and field, playing a variety of sports, seemed like just an all-around athlete. Last week we had Ashley Hueta on the podcast, who's the EQ bench record holder for women's with 700 plus pounds benched. She's also a pole fitness athlete, as well as Oceania women's strongest arm wrestling champion. So, I mean, maybe not the exact same categories, but you women are doing amazing things. Can you talk about where you're at in your athletic journey, what you want to continue to pursue?
Yeah, so in my athletic journey, I feel like I'm just in this journey of strength sports. I love team sports, but I really do enjoy these individual or these really random niche sports. I'm wearing this hat that says the Olympic USA bobsled. I actually just tried out for Team USA bobsled last week.
Let's go.
Completely random. I have a friend that's really interested in bobsled, and we went to Salt Lake City last week for her birthday. And she said, "Hey, Sabrina, they have this combine. And how bobsledding works is you try out, you do all these different events. So a 60-yard sprint, how high you can jump, how far you can jump, and you do like a sled push. And then if they like your numbers from there, they invite you to a camp. You go to this camp, they teach you up, they coach you up, and then they invite you to an actual tournament where you then get into a bobsled. From there, if they really like your performance, you get on Team USA and then possibly go to the Olympics. So I'm like, okay, like why not to try it out? I've never done a 60-yard dash. I've never tested my vertical. All these things are completely new to me. So I'm like, why not try it out? And so just doing different things like that, I really enjoy. For now, I'm focusing on track and field. It's still a brand new sport for me. I've only been throwing since my junior year of high school, which now makes throwing, I've been doing it for about 3-ish years now, which is not a long time for a college athlete. Lots of my peers have been throwing for about 7-8 years in comparison. So I'm a lot more newer to the sport. My main event is hammer throw. This is my second year doing it. And so some people are asking, because I have people that I know that are still in season because they have NCAA nationals this weekend. And I had someone ask me like, "Oh, you going to NCAA nationals?" I'm like, I just picked up my event last year. I'm still trying to learn it. I was like, I hope so. So maybe just improving in my current sport, and so I could do the best I can, because no one wants to go to college and be average at their sport. They want to be able to say, I did this, this, and this, and be content when you leave. And so right now, that's where I am. After college, I have a couple different routes I might go down. I was thinking, it wouldn't hurt if I go WWE, maybe do some wrestling for a little bit, because, that'd just be fun to say I did and just have experience in that. Possibly go down bobsledding. That would be really interesting. If I were to go to the Olympics for any sport, though, I would love to do Olympic weightlifting. It just gives me a feeling like no other, and I just know I'm so strong whenever I just lift that piece of steel up and just boom. I can't express that feeling, because then as a woman, like, you want to feel strong, you want to feel capable, and it's just something about it that just makes you feel all that. And so I've developed so much confidence through that sport. I would love to do that, but if not, bobsled would be cool too. That's where my
It's not. It's nice
yeah,
to have
and then,
options, hey?
yeah. Worst comes to worst, I'll just do some bodybuilding too. But when I look at bodybuilding, I'm like, I could do that at any age of life, but I can't. This is my prime for team sports like that.
100%. Pursue that though, like, and keep that energy and keep going after it because you have so much time. You could change up sports still and still end up in the Olympic Games for whatever it is you pursue. I take it you've kept up your Olympic weightlifting throughout your college career. Every time I bring it up and have the opportunity to, I have females share how resistance training is beneficial for their body and they're not going to get bulky and it is only going to benefit them physically, mentally, emotionally. The list goes on. Can you confirm, Sabrina?
Yes. It is so hard to gain muscle. And I was one of those people who thought, like, if I lift weights, I'm going to be bulky. But then right now I'm actually doing bodybuilding for the summer. And you have to eat so much to be able to just gain weight or gain muscle. I mean, like crazy. And I'm struggling so hard because then on top of that, as a female, you have a high metabolism. So you're just burning all this food through you. And then when you work out, you're just increasing that even more. So you're burning all this food that you're consuming. And then it's cool because, like, if you do weight training, it just more so the word tones you. It just leans you out a lot more than you would think. And so I have friends who can lift crazy heavy weights, but they don't look super bulky. And so it's cool that you can have the best of both worlds.
I think that's the best way to describe it too, because it's not attractive to be super skinny. And I'd hazard to guess that most women and men for that matter don't find it super attractive on the other end of the scale when people are like obnoxiously muscular. So having a nice happy medium, we're not going to go dad bod, pod bod length, but we want to be in shape, physical, healthy, live in active, healthy lifestyles. I got to ask, since you're down in the States and since we were trying to get you up to Canada this summer, do you have any Canadian stereotypes that you've heard of or that stick out in your mind? Like, are we riding igloo or are we riding polar bears to our igloos for school?
That sounds really mean. I have 3 Canadian teammates, and so two of them are
Nice.
javelin throwers. One of them's a multi, and they tell me all the time about how better Canada is than the U.S. and why. So I can't really say I have any ideas of what it'd be like when I've been told exactly what it's like, and that it's better. So all I hear is that it's better, but I can't
love
confirm
that.
because I've never been there.
Can you share what they explain or what their reasoning is behind why it's better?
Number 1, I'll tell you 2 reasons. The food. When my teammates first came here, they got really sick because then the food's just completely different in the U.S. because it's more, just a lot more processed foods, not as healthy, and it's just different. And then the second thing is the pollution and the traffic. Because then to get somewhere, you have to drive a long time, or there's so many cars to get anywhere. It's like you drive out of Canada, it's like boom, nature, depending where you are.
I love that. Yeah, maybe not everywhere, but once you're above once you're above like 100 kilometers past the 49th parallel, there's basically nothing. There's the vast majority of the Canadian population lives within 50 or 150 kilometers of that U.S. border. So it is pretty substantial, the amount of nature that Canada does possess. And if you haven't been, I highly recommend you come up, visit like Banff National Park, Whistler. Toronto has some decent scenery, but stay on the West Coast. It's better. The coastals, they're always better, And, but okay, bobsled, how did that testing go? You got to tell us.
I have no idea. It was so random to show up. Like, my friend, she was smiling her face off. She was like, Sabrina, we're going to go try out. And it was so cool because we had probably, I think, 2, 3 Team USA bobsled coaches there. this one girl that's been to the Olympics 3 times for bobsled. So these were professionals. They knew what they were looking for. And it was cool because there was my friend's bobsled coach was like, there's going to be 50 people there. I'm like, okay, that's cool. We show up, there's only 5. Okay, that's cool too. And at the same time, and they had 2 different combines. One was in Salt Lake City. The other one, ironically, this is where I'm from, is in San Diego, California at the same exact time that we were doing our combine. And so I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. And we just did the test, and it was pretty easy. You know, everyone gets their run-throughs. You get 2, 3 tries as many tries as you want, 2, 3. And then afterwards, they're like, okay, like, we'll have our one guy look at it and then tell you what we think. And so they're going to have other online people do submissions. And so I don't know if I'll hear a word back or not. I'll keep you updated on that. But it was just really fun to try it out.
Heck yeah. And now you're on their radar, right? And they can see some of the results that you put up. And one thing that Olympic level coaches know and understand is the work ethic that athletes like yourself possess. And they know that even if your numbers are, you know, average, that you can improve on those numbers and you're going to continue to get better, stronger, lift faster, live healthier. Like the list goes on. And it'll be worth it for them if they see an investment. And then we're going to see Sabrina Oostburg representing the U.S.
I was told they invite like different athletes because my friend qualified for USA Nationals for Olympic weightlifting, and she passed it up because she wanted to try out for the bobsled. And so she told me, like, no, you don't understand. If, let's say you go to USA Nationals for Olympic weightlifting, they'll invite you out for a tryout for bobsled. So they'll take all these different top tier athletes from any sport, like, hey, you should try out for bobsled. And they might say yes, they might say no. And so I thought that was funny. I'm like, there's no specific thing of what you have to do. It's like, you look like a great athlete. You should try bobsled. And it's really one of those sports where you don't have to have background on it. You don't have to do it if you're 5. You can just pick it up in your 20s.
It's phenomenal. And I know that Canada does the same with RBC Olympic Training Ground. And actually, Neve Huey, who's a past Athletes podcast guest, did the same thing up in Canada. She was a rugby player and a hockey player for Brock University at the same time that I was there, and just crushed for 4 years, was able to do anything athletically she was faced with. And then post-university, she goes to RBC Training Ground, and they're like, yeah, you're a raw athlete. You're going to be a bobsledder. And now she's representing Canada. So I would not put it past you in the slightest, Sabrina, for you to do the exact same thing. It would not surprise me. Being able to represent your country is something super special. I know that at Cook Stark Management, we're representing 2 Canadian Olympic athletes, being Miriam Abdul-Rashid and Hannah Taylor. And I'm so honored to be able to work with them, be able to provide additional opportunities for them and their families as we lead up to Paris, because that's a once in a lifetime moment, right? And maybe it won't be Paris for you that you're participating in the Olympics, but this could be. Oh no. Are you dropping it?
I won't be competing, but I'm actually going to Paris to help with Team USA, and I'll be working right up with the athletes.
No way. What are you doing? How'd you swing that?
Yeah, so there's this company called Living in Sport, and they do all of these great opportunities where they'll grab students who are interested in like sports management, sports administration, and they take them to these huge events. Their last events was the Las Vegas Super Bowl. They had this whole group out there working the Super Bowl. And so I got this notification in my emails like, hey, the Olympics, who wants to work it? I'm like, I don't want to work the Olympics. And so now I'll be there for 13 days in Paris, right up front with the athletes. And I'm really excited for that.
Let's go. That's insane. Good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time, especially, as an athlete, learning the inside scoop of what it's like on the business side versus hopefully one day being one of those athletes.
Yeah. And that'll be the absolute coolest story. One of the things that, we know that sees success in social media is the ability to storytell. And something like that is going to be insane. You are going to create some crazy cool content over these next few months. I'm glad we were able to connect virtually first. I know that at some point our paths are going to cross in person, and we'll be able to do this up again with lights, camera, action the proper way. But in the meantime, we had to give you the AP bump here, showcase what Sabrina's doing to set the standard for NIL athletics, female athletes all across North America. I always love to give a last minute open-ended conversation if there's something specific you'd like to share. You know, as a listener of the show, that the way we wrap up is we ask our guests their biggest piece of advice for the next generation of athletes. So I'd love to open the floor for you and allow you to give the Oostburg bump.
Yeah. My advice in one word: ask. The biggest thing with NIL, because it was so new, is that no one knew what to do. And for me, just how I got good at content creation, how I got good at being a Division I athlete, how I got good at any sport I did, I asked. Asked for help, asked for advice, asked questions, asked how to be better, how to improve. That's what you have to do. And in any aspect of life, it really applies to it, because people are more than willing to help you. I've been on LinkedIn religiously. I ask people like, hey, like, awesome to connect with you. I'm learning more about them. I have a meeting next week with the social media manager of the Kansas City Chiefs, because I asked her, I was like, hey, what's it like to, do your job? She's like, well, let's jump on the call and talk about it. I was like, okay, cool. And so just with those little things, it just starts with a simple conversation like that. You taking the courage of asking.
Let's go. I love that. That's what we needed. This is why we brought you on the show, Sabrina, to share these insights and pieces of wisdom that, frankly, people before 3 years ago weren't privy to, because NIL wasn't a thing. And you're proving out, you're the case study, you're crushing it. Where can people find you on socials so that they can continue to be impacted positively from you?
Socials, best way to connect with me is Instagram at Sabrina10_fit. I'm on every single media platform, but you can find in my bio my link to every other social media platform on there. I'm on the YouTube, the TikTok, both of those are at Sabrina10_1. You can find me on LinkedIn, just type in my name, Sabrina Oostburg. I'm on Snapchat too. That's one of my biggest followings. It's called Sabrina Got Style, because I got style. And yeah, that's mainly all that. I'm not on Twitter, but I'm on Threads too, and you can find that through my Instagram.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much, Sabrina. I appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun. Can't wait for round 2 in person. But until then, thanks for listening, folks. Appreciate you.